I like road trips and I like exploring Sweden, so today I'm gonna check out an area between Stockholm and Gothenburg. I'll start by visiting the lovely town of Trosa and then onwards to Nyköping, Mjölby and Ödeshög. Then I'll continue to Gränna, Visingsö, Jönköping, Lidköping and Mariestad. And of course, I might stop at some other interesting spots along the way. So what do you say? Should we get going in my crappy little car? Let's see what we can find in the central areas of Sweden. South of Stockholm, you find the lovely town of Trosa. Many people come here to visit, especially in summer. There's a lot of Viking remnants and runestones in the area, but most people simply come here to take a walk along the creek and enjoy the views. Trosa is known as the end of the world, and some people think that it's a kind of pun in Swedish. Trosa is also the Swedish word for panties, and women wear panties over the rear end, and the rear end is called ända in Swedish. So with a bit of mental gymnastics you can make it into a sort of pun that Trosa is by the rear end. But in reality, Trosa used to have only one road that led to town, so people used to say that it lies at the world's end because you couldn't get any further. When I'm driving south of Stockholm, I often stop at a place called Sillekrog. It's a convenient place to have lunch, and they have a pretty unique restaurant here called Daisy's. The food isn't really anything special. It's actually a bit crap, to be honest, but I just love the 50s diner-inspired decor. I just can't help it. I like it, and I usually stop at Sillekrog when I'm on the road. Nyköping is a town about an hour from Stockholm, and people speculate that it actually used to be called Aros or South Aros once upon a time. But since around the 1230s, it's been called Nyköping. It's a town full of history, and in the center of town you can find Nyköpingshus, Nyköping Castle. The first castle tower was built in the 1100s, and then it was rebuilt as a medieval fortress in the 1200s. In 1317, the king of Sweden back then, Birger Magnusson, took his two brothers captive here and let them starve to death in the tower. That event became known as Nyköpings gästabud, the Feast of Nyköping. One king of Sweden has died in this castle and one has been born here, so it's a very historically significant place in Sweden. Oh, and it's actually free to visit the King's Tower to look at the exhibits there. Thank you very much, Sörmlands Museum. Welcome to the town of Mjölby, or at least the outskirts of it. People who live between Stockholm and Gothenburg sometimes think that this area is in the middle of Sweden. That's true, horizontally. But if you look at a map of Sweden, you'll see that this whole area is actually in the lower third of the country. Still, it can be fun to say that this is the center of Sweden, just to see people from the north get really upset. Anyway, in Mjölby you can see a giant potato in the middle of a roundabout. There's no funny story behind the potato, it's just there because Mjölby municipality has a lot of food production companies. Still, I think it's a fun thing to have a look at. Something else that can be found in Mjölby is apparently a huge lösgodis store, a pick-your-own candy store, or pick and mix or whatever people call it abroad. Americans are apparently going bananas for this right now. Silly people, they're 30 years late to the party. This has been available in all Swedish supermarkets for decades. Ödeshög is named after Ödir's grave mound. And who was Ödir? Well, no one really knows for sure, but some believe that he was a pre-Viking lord of some sort. and others speculate that it might actually be the god Odin instead. So in theory, this little town could be the final resting place of Odin, at least according to the name. Close to Ödeshög, you can find the monastery ruins of Alvastra. It was founded in 1143, and it was the first Cistercian monastery in the Nordics. The monastery was abandoned in the 1500s though, during the Reformation, when King Gustav Vasa took away a lot of power from the church. According to legend, a Swedish king called Sverker den Äldre, Sverker the Older, was murdered here in 1156, and you can also find a memorial for him just south of the monastery. North of the monastery you find the Omberg Mountain and the Omberg Eco Park. This is a lovely piece of nature, and this is also where you can find Sweden's tallest tree. It's 49.5 meters tall, and it has a circumference of 3.3 meters. Or at least those were the measurements in 2016. Who knows, maybe it's grown a bit since then. Something else you can find in Omberg is a lot of mosquitoes. And I took shorts today. If you decide to come here, don't take high heels or flip-flops. Now I need to get out of these woods before I'm eaten alive. The Rök runestone is from the 800s, and it has the world's longest runic inscription. Around 50,000 people visit this stone every year, so it's one of the most visited runestones in Sweden. Except for the runestone in Stockholm Old Town, I would assume. It's an amazing piece of history, and the stone tells stories of old kings and mythological tales. But as far as I know, people still don't fully understand everything that this stone has to tell. It's an old Viking riddle wrapped in a Viking enigma. No, it's not really like that, but there are details about the mythology and the histories told that aren't fully understood. Between Ödeshög and the town of Gränna, you can find Braehus, Brahes house. Braehus was built by Per Brahe the Younger in 1651, and it was inspired by Italian architecture. It used to be quite difficult to visit these ruins. You had to climb up from the main road way down there. But these days the E4 main road goes just alongside it, so it's a very popular tourist destination in Sweden. The road between Stockholm and Gränna is pretty boring. It's just a big highway. But I always get so happy when I get down to this area. The view is spectacular. This is absolutely gorgeous to look at. Oh, and do you see that big island in the middle of the lake? That's Visingsö, where we're going later today. But first, let's check out the town of Gränna and some candies. The town of Gränna is famous for its beautiful location and for having excellent bike trails and hiking trails. But most of all, it's famous for polkagrisar, the candy canes that are made here. Amalia Eriksson started making these candies here in Gränna in the 1800s, and these days thousands of people flock to these candy manufacturers every year. But to be honest, I'm actually not a fan of mint-flavored candy, so this is not a perfect place for me. Instead, I'm gonna take a boat and check out something else. Gränna lies next to Lake Vättern, which is Sweden's second biggest lake. It's actually the sixth biggest lake in Europe. And in the middle of that lake you find the island of Visingsö. There's a lot to see and do on Visingsö. You can look at the Visingsborg Castle ruins or rent a kayak or a bike to see more of the island and its surroundings. Or if you don't want to move around all that much, you can take what they generously call the Visingsö train to get around the island. Or you can ride a horse and carriage called remmalag, which I opted for. This is the center of the island. It's not exactly a big place. The Kumlaby church was built during the 1100s, but it was rebuilt during the 1600s by Per Brahe the Younger because he wanted to make a school for astronomy. That's also why the top of the tower is cut off, because they wanted a place to observe the stars. There are no benches in this church, and that's because the lectures were held in Latin and they were 3 hours long. So in order for the peasants on the island to not fall asleep during the lectures, they had to stand. There's a lot of planted oak forests on Visingsö, and that's because the Swedish Navy wanted to have timber for their ships. Unfortunately, 100 years later, when the oaks were ready, the Navy had stopped producing ships out of wood. You can also see a lot of Viking burial mounds and graveyards in general on Visingsö. There's a lot more people buried here than lived on the island. That's because people back then believed that departed spirits couldn't cross water, so they shipped all the corpses here to be buried so they wouldn't be haunted by ghosts. There are 703 people living on Visingsö, and around 100,000 people visit the island every year. According to legend, Visingsö was created when the giant Vist took a huge tuft of grass and placed it in Lake Vättern. He did it so that his wife would have something to step on when they walked across Vättern to the other side. This is an absolutely lovely place, but I have some other places that I want to visit as well, so I guess that it's time to move on. Sweden isn't very well populated, so it's a bit weird that we have two cities that's basically grown together, Jönköping and Huskvarna. Huskvarna is a town most known for the hockey team HV71 and for sewing machines. And Jönköping is most known for mechanical workshops and for DreamHack. If you don't know what DreamHack is, it's a gigantic geek expo that's actually gonna move to Stockholm as of 2024. So I guess that's one less thing that Jönköping will be famous for. This area is known as the Bible Belt of Sweden, by the way. Bet you didn't think that secular old Sweden had places like that, did you? Anyway, time to move on to the next place, from Bibles to birds. If this had been in March, I could have seen 30,000 cranes visit this lake, Hornborgasjön, in something called the Crane Dance. But alas, it's in the middle of summer right now, so all the cranes are long since gone. All I can see are some angry geese. But this place is still completely gorgeous. Crane eggs in natural size. There's a lot to see in the area, old ruins, gorgeous nature trails, and you can also visit the town of Skara. Skara has a lovely cathedral and a lot of historical sites and a railway museum. And outside of Skara you can also find Scandinavia's biggest water park, Skara Sommarland. But yeah, I'm not gonna go there. It's a little bit too cold for a water park according to me. And it's a little bit too late in the evening. I think they're closed by now. Just north of Skara, you find the town of Lidköping that lies next to Lake Vänern. Vänern is Sweden's biggest lake, and it's actually the biggest lake in the European Union. If it hadn't been for Russia, it would have been the biggest lake in all of Europe. For some people, Nyköping is most known for the porcelain factory Rörstrand. Sorry, but I'm not gonna visit Rörstrand. I don't need any more porcelain right now. I don't need more stuff in general. But for other people, Nyköping is most known for Power Meet, one of the biggest car meets in Sweden. Or is it the biggest one? I don't really know for sure. But there's more than cars and porcelain in Nyköping. Sillekrog Castle is a remnant of Sweden's Great Power era. It dates back to 1298 and it's an absolutely gorgeous castle. This is actually one of the most popular tourist destinations in western Sweden. There's gorgeous nature, you can see historical exhibits, and you can even spend the night at the castle. And during summers, there's even opera being performed at the castle. This really is an amazing place to visit. But I have something else close by that I wanna check out as well. Kinnekulle Quarry is a 40-meter deep limestone quarry, and it's quite a beautiful sight. Some people even call it Sweden's Grand Canyon or the Little Grand Canyon. Of course, that's only by people who haven't seen Grand Canyon, but it's still well worth a detour to have a look at. Also by Lake Vänern, you can find the town of Mariestad. This is a very nice place to visit, and it's full of history, but that's not why I came here. Partly it's because it's on the way home, but I also wanted to visit the town that gave us Mariestad Lager. Mariestad is one of the most popular beers in Sweden, and it's named after this place. I'm unfortunately not gonna be able to drink any Mariestad in Mariestad because I'm driving. But I just had to stop by because it sounds pretty funny, drinking Mariestad in Mariestad. Years ago, I made a video all about the town of Örebro. The most notable feature of the city is of course Örebro Castle that you can see smack in the middle of town. This castle dates back to the 1300s, and it's not only a gorgeous castle, it's also haunted. 5 different ghosts are reported to haunt the castle all the way from the year 1434 to the 1980s. So this castle has 700 years of history, and for 600 of those years, it's apparently been plagued with ghosts. It might not be the most haunted house in Sweden, but it's definitely had a long history of spooky sightings. And that's about it. Now I'm gonna drive back to Stockholm from here, and you're gonna like and subscribe. Or at least I hope that's what you're gonna do. Either way, have a great day.